You are officially in the loop. You are now officially in the loop. Let's get to it. Okay, guys, welcome back to In the Loop podcast. I am here today, and we're talking about what we've been talking about all week long. Ren Richard started it. Cheyanne McCartney's here with me today to finish it. Everybody is buzzing about this Old West Futurity in Heber City, Utah that's coming up with a phenomenal payout, and somebody's going to have a chance to walk away with $1 million next year. Cheyanne McCartney, thanks for joining us to talk about all things Old West Futurity today on In the Loop.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. This is an exciting topic, so I'm excited to be here.
And this is some of the top, like, I want to say, obviously, everybody knows how many accomplishments you have under your belt. NFR qualifier, aggregate winner, and plus, I don't even know what your earnings are in the fraternities. Probably over $1 million, close to it. You've kicked butt, taken names. You and your husband, Cody McCartney, you've absolutely just excelled in these rope horse fraternities. You're having an outstanding year so far in all things you do. I feel like everywhere I look up, it's like Cheyanne McCartney, Cheyanne McCartney, Cheyanne McCartney. So congratulations on that. But you are one of the few breakaway ropers who have made the transition. You pro rodeo and you're doing a lot of these rope horse fraternities. So talk about how that has just evolved in the last few years. We've seen these rope horse fraternities come up, and also learning like what it takes to be, stepping out of the pro rodeo arena and into the rope horse fraternity arena.
It's really exciting. I grew up, my dad always made me ride a lot of horses, and, I had my good ones that I brought to the rodeos, but I didn't get to ride them at home. He had me ride younger ones, or I had other horses that I had to ride at home to work on my horsemanship. So when this all started, the futurity world started, I was so excited because I've always had a love for riding different horses and trying to make horses better. And I feel like that goes in kind of hand in hand with my husband, Cody McCartney, because he's made a transition to training horses. That's his business. He trains calf horses. And so it's really exciting. And I love the futurities. I love competing at them. Last year, I had a few calls. The Old West was kind of during a lot of the rodeos in Utah and during Cheyenne and all that. And so it was new. And I had a few calls asking if I would be there. And I said, I'm absolutely going to be there. I don't care what rodeo I have to turn out of, which is not an easy thing to say because you know as well as I do that those are all huge rodeos.
Yep.
And it worked out to where I didn't have to miss one of those rodeos, but it can be tricky scheduling both. Fortunately for me, Cody is really in charge of training those horses. I don't get credit for training them. I help when I'm at home and I do rope on them and show them in the breakaway, but that is really his side, and that he is the main reason that this works for me as well as it has. But it is just so exciting. This was an amazing event, so I'm really looking forward to this year and a few changes that they've made, and I just think it's great for our industry, the futurity that breakaway and calf roping that these futurities have taken off. Now there's a lot of good futurities to go to throughout the year and a lot of money that can be made. And, you can start with a 3 or 4 year old. And if you can't train it yourself, you can put it with a trainer that does a good job and gets it ready for these shows. And you can win a lot of money. And at the end of the deal, you're going to have a nice horse that you didn't have to go give 100,000 for. Hopefully you've won close to or over $100,000 on it and paid part of your training bill. And, however it looks like for you, there's people that own these horses, and then there's some that own them and have them in training that plan to ride them for themselves later or sell them. But it's great for our industry and breakaway and calf roping especially.
And there's so many, I mean, just all the things that you were saying right there. There's so many different avenues that we're going to talk about today that go along with the fraternity aspect of it. But one thing I want to start with first and foremost is the payout. You're just saying, hey, you can invest in a horse, you can take him to a trainer, and then you can win well over 100,000 on him. And just hearing that spoken out loud, it's like, oh my goodness, there's so much money out there available in the rope horse fraternities. Like, I think, breaking the $100,000 point at pro rodeos is like, you're doing a happy dance doing that. And
That's
plus all
right.
the expenses that go with it. So the amount of money that's available in these rope horse fraternities to actually, if you look at it like a businessman and businesswoman's point of view of how much you've got invested, what you have in training, and then the potential winnings that you have, it's just astronomical. The numbers are so much bigger. Talk a little bit about those numbers, especially with Old West. I mean, they're guaranteeing a certain amount of money for each individual competition.
It's huge. I think that the amount of money that is up to win at these events has really changed the game in the futurity world and the young horse game for breakaway and calf roping especially. Um, it's a little bit later to the game than the team roping and barrel race and whatnot is, but it's great that it's happening. I think that it's changed. It's changed what kind of horse you have to start with. They have to be ready sooner. But it's just amazing. I mean, you can go the old west, and you don't have to just win first to win good money either. It's gonna pay good if you place an average and do good in the rounds and whatnot. So it's huge.
Yeah, there's a lot of chances at the Old West. So it's guaranteed, especially, we're breakaway specific. So open breakaway is guaranteed to pay $25,000, and that's just in the average. The rounds are going to pay awesome as well. There's so, like you said, there's so many different chances. It's not just judged, but it's also timed. And so that plays a part. Your time and your judgment on your horse and your performance plays a part into it. So there's so many different elements that go into it that give you more chances than just running out there and trying to be as fast as you can. Your horsemanship plays a huge part in it, and how your horse works from start to finish. And that leads into my next question: is talk about the genetics here. I know that you have a really cool little sorrel horse that you're going to be riding at the Old West Fraternity. That's y'all's. Tell me a little bit about those genetics, and also let's talk about the genetics you've seen. One thing Ren Richard and I talked about on our podcast that we brought the Old West in was we're seeing people start to breed for breakaway roping genetics specifically, for calf roping genetics specifically, just as they would a racehorse and or a cutting horse. We're seeing that kind of start where it's starting to take place and play with the breeding there and really strategize. So talk about your horse you're taking and then how you've seen that breeding evolve and the genetics that's come along with these rope horse fraternities.
So I will for sure have my Woody B Tough there. He's entered. He's 6 years old, so he'll be in the six and under. And we've had really good luck with the Woody B Toughs. They have speed, they have size, they're athletic, they want to do their job. But I think one thing that is unique about the Old West is that they do not have to be bred a certain way because at a lot of the futurities, you look at the gold buckle and you can enter any aged horse, like they have four and under and six and under, but you want them to be in the stallion incentives and the breeders incentives to win that extra money. And then you go to the Royal Crown, and they just recently changed that the way that Gold Buckle has it. But before, if they were not in the stallion incentive, you couldn't enter them at all, and that has since
Okay.
then changed. So I think that one thing that is unique about the Old West, one, that they have an open. That is so exciting. I think that that is a great thing for breakaway and is going to add to the futurity so well. And that open girl that's rodeoing, that's close by or out there, or I'm going to be out there already, but I would definitely drive out there for it if I wasn't already out there. But that they can come by and ride their rodeo horse, that doesn't matter how old it is. Um, and then the six and under, they don't have to be bred a certain way. But I do think that the breeding has really changed. You want horses that are in incentives and that can go compete at all the side pot money. A good horse is a good horse, but I definitely think if I'm starting with one that is younger, that I'm going to put time and money into training, I'm going to want one that's in those incentives. And I think that's a huge thing.
Well, and you talked about your Woody B Tough. I think we've seen a lot of the Woody B Tough breeding and that's had a lot of success in these fraternities. What other is there any other like standout stallions and or mares that you've seen coming up in these genetic lines that you think are going to play a big role in these fraternities, years to come?
I think so. I mean, there's so many good ones. We really like the Metallic Rebels. We have a lot of horses come through at our place, and so it's really hard to say just a few. You have the Solo Select uh, futurity that they're having later this year, and you have to buy a breeding. You want to buy a breeding to one of their studs to get an entry into that fraternity, and it's going to be huge. So it's definitely a lot to keep up with the fraternity world. We have a lot of people call and ask questions and keep up with it because it's changing so much. And
Mhm.
I just think there's so many good ones. It's really hard for me to say just a few because the first thing I'm looking at is do I like that stud? And then am I going to be able to ride this horse at every futurity possible? And it doesn't always work out that way. We've had really good ones that weren't in any incentives and they still won a lot of money. But if I'm starting, I'm looking at that first.
Well, and that kind of leads into my next question is not just what are you looking at in the stallions, but what are you looking at in the conformation of these horses or when you see, I think that for me is and mostly all I've ever done is rodeo and or jackpot, right? So I'm like, is he 10 or older? And if he's not, I'm not interested, because I want them to be rock solid and be able to take all the heat. But now I think it's so neat to see that you're seeing 3 and 4 year olds come up to these futurities that are seasoned enough that can take this heat. And you guys are roping on them just like they were pro rodeo horses. I mean, you're making, the same fast time runs on these futurity horses that you would be making on your veteran seasoned rodeo horses. So what are you looking for when you look at a 2 year old and you're like, hey, I can see that picture is going to be painted. He's going to be great or she's going to be great. Like, what are some of the characteristics you look for in these horses?
Well, a lot of them we get to ride, so how they'll ride around. Usually we'll start with them as 3-year-olds at our place. So we kind of will get to ride them, see how they move their feet, see how they stop and just handle themselves and their size. I know when they're babies, they're going to end up bigger, but just I don't know. A lot of it for us goes off on riding them, and the look definitely and conformation has a huge part of it. But we are fortunate to where we get to kind of ride them around and see how they feel and move their feet and whatnot. I think that's a big thing for us.
Well, and you've seen me ride. I ride two-handed. So, if you give riding lessons, that would be great. I'd be much appreciated. It's an inside joke. If you see us, we'll each one tell you about the story. But I do ride two-handed, and Cheyenne
You
has
will
seen it.
demonstrate. You will
She will
demonstrate.
demonstrate.
No, you will demonstrate. I'm not demonstrating.
Oh my gosh. And so, I mean, that is one thing I do think is so neat just to watch these horses evolve. You and Cody have been at the forefront of this and you've seen I mean, Cody's been involved in it. Now you're involved in it together as a married couple. Like you said, he's training them, you're riding them at these fraternities. Um, what has the old West fraternity is so unique, and like you said, it's judged and timed. There's not there's incentives, but there's not breeding incentives so much. There's a huge sale that everybody's talking about this year regarding the sale. If you buy a horse that's in the sale next year, if you ride them at the fraternity, they're going to be eligible to win $1 million. So talk about, I know you and Cody are always strategizing and you're trying to be on top of your game in that. Have you guys thought about buying a horse out of the sale this year? If so, what's your strategy? Have you looked at any of the sale horses and where do you think that's going to go?
We haven't looked at any specifically yet. I've kind of seen some that have popped on there, but I don't know if you're in the horse business, how do you not think about buying a horse in that or trying to get one of those horses? I mean, the thing about the Old West for me last year was it was a first class event. I mean they did everything possible to make it great for the horses that were competing there, the ropers that were competing there, the owners. I mean, just first class all the way. And so I think that how do you not look at them? And even if you're not really full fledged in the young horse business, how do you not look at them? It's going to be huge. I think it's just going to keep getting bigger and better. There is not anything that is unthought of with this fraternity and the way that they do things. So I think you can't go wrong with trying to compete or buy a horse from an association or group of people that do things the way that this group of people does things.
Yeah. Well, and you nailed it on the head. It is a first class event. And I know the founders and the group of gentlemen and women that are putting this together, they have literally thought of everything. And the coolest thing after talking to you and to Ren about this is like they are in this for the long haul, right? This isn't going to be like a 1 to 2 year event. They want this event to last for decades upon decades. They're building it out, just like this year they have the sale. There's 40 sale horses that are going to be in there. You have to buy a slot to get a horse in the sale. So it's a very prestigious thing. They want quality, great horses that are going to carry on and prove, hopefully their genetics in the arena next year. And then to follow that, they're talking about for the non-pros, there's so many different levels I'm learning about within these fraternities, but the non-pros in a few years, like having those horses aged out, and then when they're aged out, you compete on them and you can win an incentive and there's going to be 50, 100,000, like there's so many numbers. I'm just like, holy cow, there's so much opportunity. There's so many numbers. I don't even know where to start. But knowing that, like you said, you can come back and you can win money at these incentives. Like if you, for instance, bought a sale horse and you come back on and you make it to a short round on that sale horse next year, you're guaranteed a certain amount of money just for making the short round on that horse. So as you and Cody are looking at this, and your customers too, I know you guys have a lot of customers that trust you and like your guidance, your direction on this. How are you advising? Are you a part of all of these fraternities? Are you a part of just some of the fraternities? Like, which ones kind of benefit? Does it benefit certain people certain ways? How do you guys look at that?
We try to go to every single one that we're able to go to. I think last year we missed one fraternity in South Dakota of all the fraternities that they had all year. And maybe the one in Buckeye. We didn't get to go to the one in Buckeye, but it's huge. I mean, the cool thing about this sale is that, these horses they are very, very specific about what horses are going to be put in this. Like every
Mhm.
single one of them is going to be an amazing product that any trainer, owner, rider would want to start with. And so I think it's going to be really cool to see who buys what horse and where they end up training for this event for the next year. And I think next year it's going to be amazing to watch this. I think we're all going to be on the edge of our seats, and it's going to be something that's really neat to keep up with.
Yeah.
That this horse was sold there, and that they're going to be competing there next year. We haven't really had anything like that.
Mhm.
That I can think of in the futurity world. So it is a really neat concept, and I think it's going to be fun to keep up with. And you're talking about the non-pro. Another thing that is in the breakaway is the 19 and under in the open as a side pot. So that is just another. I mean, the Old West is just trying to create opportunity after opportunity in different ways for people to win money and have success at this event.
Well, and I think that that is something as Ren was talking about it, like you nailed it. They're creating opportunities for each and every person. It's not just pros, it's not just amateurs. It's the trainers, it's the breeders, it's anybody and everybody they can think of within the horse industry. They're trying to create a space here. And that kind of leads me to my next question is there's more, as a rodeo cowgirl, it's just us and our horse and then our poor husband, whoever chose to marry us, that gets to be a part of it and listen to all of our things. But obviously, there's so many more people involved. But really, as far as the competition goes, it's you and your horse. Whereas in the fraternities, it's the trainers, the breeders, the riders. There's so many different components. There's so many different people that have a chance to win and are invested in this. How has that been? Has that been like really fun just to be a part of a little bit of a different experience on these fraternities that way?
It definitely is. It's something else that you have to get used to, because we always want to do good for ourselves and on our own horse. But when you have a customer that's put their faith in you to get this horse trained and show it, you just really want to do good for them. And when you do have some success on it, it's so rewarding for someone else that, like I said, has just put their faith in you to train their horse and get it ready and also compete on it. I think that's a
Mhm.
huge thing. There's so much preparation that goes into this. Getting them ready, making sure they've been to enough of jackpots or things to get them through the barrier, and then a lot of these deals we're running 3 to 4 calves. The Old West is 2 and a short, and so you're making 3 runs, and I personally really always want to do. I'm wouldn't say nervous, but I'm more like if I want to do so good for our customers and owners, and it is a rewarding feeling because I know before this I've always owned my own horses that I've rode, and so you're just used to dealing with yourself, but to be able to have an owner there watching you or send them the videos and say, "Hey, this is how we did," or when they're so excited, it's a really neat experience, and it's very rewarding when it works out in the end.
And elaborate a little bit more about the preparation that goes into it behind with you and Cody, and I know TJ's a big helper there on y'all's ranch and establishment. What goes into it? Is every horse different, or do you guys kind of try to have a program and like trying to have a process for each one of them? How much do you expose them beforehand? Like what goes in a little bit more in depth on the preparation of these futurity horses?
Well, I think a lot of that comes with just time and knowing what to do with a horse and what a horse needs, but we have several 3-year-olds. We probably have the most 3-year-olds that we've ever had. And so a lot of people are getting us these horses earlier. And so they're having more time to prepare, more time to get ready. And, a lot of times what we might get one that is like I bought a 4-year-old the other day, and the horses started and a little behind, yes, but it just really depends on the horse. The ones that are good minded, they get a little more of it, and it just depends. It's an all day affair at my house. We ride a lot of horses in a day, and some of them need a little more tinkering. Some of them don't mind as much, and we try to take them a lot of places once they get going, and stock charge on them, get them through the barrier, get them new places. It's just kind of it's a different journey for every horse, and we just work really hard to know what horse needs what and stick with a program on them.
Yeah. Well, and I love that too. It's a different journey for every horse. And one of the cool things I think too is there's trainers like yourself that are preparing these horses in a way that's giving them confidence, right? And so we're seeing them step up into the futurity world and excel and win, but they're not blown up after the fact. So they're having confidence, even like your Woody Be Tough. We've seen you take him from the futurities, also ride him. You won the Wendy Ryan Memorial on him. You won the Spicer Grip Memorial on him. Like, you're taking these horses from the futurities foundation, you're putting them into the jackpots, the pro rodeos, and they're staying together. So I think that that's pretty neat to see how the trainers have evolved even and learning about what each horse takes in that specific journey to get the best for that horse throughout their career.
Yeah, I think so too. I rode that horse at Cheyenne last year, and that was the first rodeo that I ever rode him at, and I really needed him there, so I rode him, and I think I was 8 seconds on my first one. So you know what that means? That means we were going really
Sometimes at Cheyenne, that's a good run.
it was a good run. It was not a good time, but it was a good run for the calf that we had. And I really wanted to take him to the rodeos last year. He was a 5 year old. We had him when he was 3. Cody started him. We sold him. We ended up getting him back, and he didn't do a whole lot his 4 year old year. So I would say he was behind in a sense. And then his 5 year old year, we started taking him to the futurities, and after I rode him at Cheyenne, I really wanted to take him to the rest of the rodeos, but I told Cody that I thought he was going to be good for me later on, and I wanted him to be good for a long time. So I sent him home with Cody, and Cody brought him to, seasoned him, but here and there to where he could go to one rodeo, but he didn't have to go, all week like we do rodeo. And so I
Mhm.
think that is why he stayed together. I think he would have been okay if I kept him, but I just thought it was a better place for Cody because he would be able to take his time, and if he needed a break, he could give him a break and whatnot. So we really try to do that. There might be some horses that miss one event in the futurity at a futurity that's a 4 or 5 year old, depending on how solid they are. We might just ride them in the breakaway, or we might just ride them in the tie down. We might not do both to where they get 6 to 8 calves in 2 days to try to do that and make sure that they're a good horse by the end of their 6 year old year.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just neat to listen to the process and it goes on behind the scenes for each individual horse. And I know a lot of people are like, okay, this sounds great. How do I get involved? Like, how do I get involved in these fraternities? Where do I start? I'm a rodeo cowgirl, or I'm a high school girl that's graduating coming up. Like, there's so many different avenues of people that are like, how do I get involved in the fraternities? So what would your advice be to a first time fraternity person that maybe is listening to this that says, "Hey, this all sounds great and good, but where do I start?"
I would definitely say find someone that you trust that's not going to lead you astray with, where you're getting a horse from or what your plan is with it, whether you're training it or trying to send it to someone. I would say just try to get with somebody that is credible and has a, good reputation. And if you need help finding a horse, get that person, and you want to look at where all you'll be able to ride that horse is another big thing, like we were talking about with the incentives, and know where you want to go. And then if you are putting it in training, put it with a trainer that you trust that is going to be honest with you. If it's not ready to go to something, make sure it's ready for the next event.
Yeah, probably a two-handed trainer like myself. One last question for you, Miss McCartney. What do you think in all the fraternities that you've been to? Like you said, you missed 2 last year, which is it's part of your business, but that's a lot of fraternities to go to. So you guys have seen them all. What sets the Old West fraternity apart to you?
I think in the summertime, it's in the summertime. Last year was in July and it was outside, and this year it's in June. But I would definitely say that there's going to be an open this year. I would say that they go the extra mile to make this event great event for everyone competing, everyone that's showing up, and everyone that's watching. And now with this sale, I think that's going to be a game changing, amazing thing to even if you don't buy a horse from there, but you keep up with it. I think it's going to be amazing to follow those stories and those horses. And yeah, it's a great event. I can't wait to compete there and see everything that unfolds there.
Well, best of luck, Heber City, Utah. in June. Entries are closing pretty soon, but if you want to get in, they take late entries up until the day of the event. June 16th is the last day to enter. June 17th through the 21st is the Futurity. We have heading, healing, breakaway roping. I know we just focused on breakaway roping today, but it's going to be an amazing event. We have the sale is what I'm most looking forward to. Obviously the breakaway too, but I'm just excited to see the sale and where it takes us. $1 million next year, for somebody that's going to win on one of those sale horses is pretty exciting. But best of luck to you and your husband at the Fraternity, Cheyanne, and thanks for coming on today and telling us all about the Old West Fraternity.
Thank you for having me.